Hello and welcome. Hello. Hello and welcome to New York Metropolitan Transportation Council's Program, Finance, and Administration Committee, or PFAC meeting. I'm Ian Francis, representative of New York State Department of Transportation and acting chair of PFAC. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the NYMTC website within the next 2 weeks. Today's meeting is available virtually via webinar as well as in person at the NYMTC office at 25 Beaver Street in Lower Manhattan. PFAC members are participating in today's meeting virtually. For the meeting audience who are on the webinar, your lines will remain muted throughout the meeting. The chat pod is available for your use and is being monitored by NYMTC staff. During the public participation section of the agenda, registered participants will be called on in the order of their registration. Registered speakers who are participating by webinar will be called on their line, and their lines will be open for their remarks. At this time, I will begin the roll call. When I say your agency, I ask that each representative state your name and the NYMTC principal you're representing. First, the voting members. I'm Ian Francis, representing New York State Department of Transportation Commissioner Marie-Therese Dominguez. New York City Department of Transportation.
You broke up. Did you say New York City DOT?
I did, Yogesh. Yes.
Oh, sorry. Yes. This is Yogesh Sangui, New York City DOT, and I represent Commissioner Idanis Rodriguez.
Thank you. Next, we'll have New York City Department of City Planning.
Good morning, Ian. Jack Schmidt, representing Department of City Planning Director and City Planning Commission Chair Daniel Garodnick.
Thank you, Jack. Next, Metropolitan Transportation Authority.
Good morning. This is Julia Seltzer from MTA, representing Executive Chairman Jana Lieber.
Thank you, Julia. Next, Nassau County.
Nassau County, Sean Sally, representing County Executive Bruce Blakeman.
Good morning, Sean.
Good morning.
Next, Suffolk County.
Good morning, Darnell Tyson, representing Suffolk County, County Executive Stephen Ballone.
Good morning, Darnell. Then Rockland County.
Morning, Pat Girton, representing Rockland County Executive Ed Day.
Good morning, Pat. Then Putnam County.
Good morning, John Tully, representing County Executive Mary Ellen Odell.
Thank you, John. Westchester County.
Naomi Klein, representing County Executive George Latimer.
Thank you. Thank you, Naomi. Now for the advisory members. Port Authority of New York and New Jersey.
Good morning. This is Jay Sheffield, representing Executive Director Rick Cotton.
Thank you, Jay. New Jersey Transit. New Jersey Transit. Okay, we'll come back to them. North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority.
Hi, good morning. This is Dave Barron, representing NJTP Executive Director Mary Mead.
Thank you, Dave. New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. Department of Environmental Conservation. Okay, we'll come back to that. Federal Transit Authority Administration. Sorry. FTA.
Is on the call. He is having audio issues, but he is representing the FTA.
Okay, what is his name? Andrea?
Daniel Moser.
Daniel Moser. Thank you. Next, the Federal Highway Administration. Federal Highway Administration. Okay, we'll come back to them. And the United States Environmental Protection Agency.
Hi, good morning. This is Lily Black, representing the EPA under Lisa Garcia.
Thank you, Lily. Okay, did New Jersey Transit or New York State DE Environmental Conservation join us?
New Jersey Transit and the DEC, the state DEC, are not representing today, but Gautam Mani is representing the Federal Highway Administration. It seems that he's having audio issues as well, but he's on the call.
All right, thank you. So by my count and under our operating procedures, we have a quorum for today's meeting. We will now review a presentation on the Suffolk County Reimagine Transit Initiative given by Ankita Rathi, planning consultant at Suffolk County Economic Development and Planning. Ankita has been managing multiple strategic transportation planning projects for Suffolk County, including the ongoing Reimagine Transit Initiative, the Suffolk County Mobility Study, the Hike and Bike Master Plan, and the Microtransit Pilot. With a background in civil engineering and planning, Ankita seeks to deploy her skills and experience to develop solutions that expand and enhance people's transportation options and create more vibrant and livable places. Ankita will be presenting on the Suffolk County Reimagine Transit Initiative, which has been funded using federal planning funds through the NYMTC planning process. Please join me in welcoming Ankita. Would you please unmute Ankita's microphone?
Thank you. I am just going to share my screen.
Thank you.
Do you guys see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for this opportunity. So, Reimagine Transit Initiative. It's the Suffolk County Mobility Implementation Plan, which is, as you mentioned, funded through NYMTC grants. So this builds on the previous work which was done by EDP and DPW jointly, which was the Suffolk County Mobility Study, again, a study which was funded through NYMTC. And it kind of laid the framework as to what the county needs to do if they want to kind of redesign their mobility services. And that identified specific action items, one of which was redesigning the bus network and incorporating more modern and up-to-date transit offerings like on-demand transit. This is also building up on the goals of Connect Long Island, which is the regional transportation plan of Suffolk County. So goals. So the existing fixed route transit network hasn't gotten a comprehensive look and redesign since decades. So it was time for this to happen, as well as we wanted to look into integrating some of the modern on-demand transit services. Apart from that, we wanted this process to be a collaborative process between the agencies as well as the community. And we have given a lot of effort and focus into coordinating with the community, engaging them, and understanding what their goals and priorities are, and trying to align this plan with that. And as mentioned before, it supports the goal of Connect Long Island because this kind of helps to strengthen transit connections to regional assets. So it's a joint undertaking with EDP and DPW, and we are helped by Jared Walker and Associates. They are the lead consultant on that, facilitated by Public Works Partners and Creighton Manning. So this slide kind of summarizes the project process and where we are today. So we started with the planning phase in which we looked into the existing system and the markets and needs for transit. So we did a lot of data collection in terms of ridership numbers, in terms of on-time performance. We kind of analyzed those, saw where we were, and we also looked into transit markets and needs. So where are our low-income populations, where are our equity groups? We looked into where future developments and things which would be more conducive to transit use, or which transit use should support. Those are. So we did all of that, and that was summarized in the choices and concepts report, which was released in April. So what that did was that kind of based on all this background analysis introduced two concepts. One was more focused on ridership and the other one was more focused on coverage. And we went out to the community and the stakeholders in summer of last year, 2021, and we asked them which of the alternatives kind of resonates with them more, which is the preferred one. And we took all that feedback. Apart from that feedback, we had also a Reimagine Transit Advisory Group, which is like a group of transit advocates. We have local planning organizations on it. We have departments. We have like the DPW staff on it. We have EDP staff on it, planning staff on it. And we kind of get together and we talked about what needs to be addressed. And if we had any concerns or feedback, we went back and forth. So using all of that, we drafted those two concepts and went back to the community now, which is ongoing. And we asked them, like incorporating your network, we have a draft new network. So now what do you think about it? So we are within that phase where people are in the process of reviewing the draft new network, providing their comments. We had 2 community meetings in March, and the survey is open until April end. Once we are done with this engagement phase 2, we will go back to the drawing board. We will look into what feedback we have collected and then tweak or finalize the draft new network for the new network, and then develop recommendations as to what are the final routings, the schedule, the stop locations, and then the rollout plan. So what the network looks like now. So this map shows the existing weekday service. What the colors indicate. So all the routes which are in red, which you see are a few, are the ones which provide service or which have headways 30 minutes or less. So these are the routes which come like every 30 minutes at those stops. The routes in dark blue, which you see a lot of them here, those are the routes which have a frequency which is about like more than 30 minutes, but 60 minutes in between that period. And we have a lot of those. And then we have some routes which are like the pale blue color that you see here, which is more than 60 minutes. So most of the routes currently in the system, they run at like frequency which is about an hour or more. This is the existing Sunday service. So you see a lot of routes just go away. We have few routes which service on Sunday. So when we started this exercise, we wanted to understand like, how do we do this? So one way of deciding where to put your investments is understanding what's the impact of it. And we are using 2 criteria to kind of judge what's the impact of transit investments or how useful the transit will be. So one of them is access and the other one is proximity. So what is access? So imagine this is a person in a neighborhood which is full of destinations, retail, work, gym, church, and this is where the person can get into 45 minutes. So this is that blob where the person can walk to the transit, take a transit, and reach within this area. So he or she can only reach to these destinations within that amount of time. And this is what is access. So for this study, we are only looking at access to jobs, but we know based on past research, once you look into access of jobs, it acts as a proxy, or the access to education, retail, other services, they kind of follow the same trend. So this is one of the big metrics that we have been using to understand how useful the proposed or the existing services. So, and how much access the person has also impacts the ridership. So when you try to maximize access, it actually increases the usefulness of that transit service. Because once you expand the access, the person can reach to more places in less time, and it increases their economic opportunity. It increases where they can go without being dependent on a car. It also supports the county's overall goal of promoting walkable communities, like trying to decrease their emissions, trying to decrease their car dependency. So this was an important metric for us. So understanding what is coverage versus ridership goals. So this is what was the deciding factor. This is what we asked the community. So imagine two hypothetical neighborhoods. All these small dots are actually people living in this neighborhood. So one way to look at this, like while providing service, is to provide your service through the corridor which would cater to most of the people. In this case, it's the route A and B. So when you do this, you're putting all your resources onto two routes, so you have more buses on those two routes. So in this case, the frequency will be really high. Like you could probably get a bus every 15 minutes. And it provides access to most of the people, like most of these dots here. Whereas when you try to do a coverage-based network, you try to kind of reach all of these people. And then you have multiple routes, but then that leads to less buses on each of those routes. So you provide access to a lot of people, but then only like that service is not as useful as the other service. So that's kind of the trade-off. Like if you want to promote ridership and if you want to give very useful service, access to that service to most of the people, ridership is the way to go. But if you want to make sure that you have lifeline service and some access to transit to most of the people, then the goal is for coverage. So it's about finding the balance between these two goals. So the existing network is kind of 50-50. So if we look at like that, like if you have $1 in transit investment, so 50 cents of that dollar is being spent on routes, which kind of have a lot of ridership, a lot of people use them. And the later 50 cents of the budget is spent on routes which we know don't have as much ridership, but it kind of provides transit coverage in areas which are less dense and which don't have ridership as high as the E routes. So based on this, we developed two contrasting concepts. So ridership, where we went a little further away towards ridership, moving from 50-50 to 70-30. And then we have the coverage concept where we shifted slightly towards coverage, having the balance of 40-60. And we asked the stakeholders, the survey, the community as to what their preferred network is. So in addition to the access, the second stuff we looked into was proximity to transit. And this is one of the infographic which kind of shows how the access changes from coverage to ridership. So imagine this is a person who's living here, and this is the point where he wants to access transit. So the area which you see in blue is the area which is new access. The areas in gray are the areas which lost access, like moving from the existing to the coverage concept. And the areas which have like a pale bluish grayish thing, that's the retained access. So as you see in the coverage network, like some addition in terms of transit, but like places you can reach, but then you also have some areas where you lose transit. Moving to the ridership concept, you see a lot more increase in the access. This is because you have a higher frequency of service, so you can reach further away in that same given amount of time. Plus, you also have timed connections. That's one of the features which was introduced in the ridership concept, where the buses, like if you have a point, like a pulse point, where multiple routes kind of come together, then the waiting time, the average waiting time you would expect is half of the frequency of the highway. But then in case of a timed connection, the buses would come at that point in a way that they are like 5 minutes apart from each other. So the time a person has to wait after getting off a bus and getting onto a new bus would decrease. So that is what is also enabling the person or the rider to reach further away. Access to jobs. So we compared how the access to jobs changes throughout the county if we move from existing to coverage or existing to ridership. So as you see, throughout the county, the access to job increases by almost 50% in a ridership concept and about 30% in coverage. And the trend kind of follows for all different equity cohorts as well. So even for residents of color, the access increases a lot, about 63% in case of ridership and about 13% in case of coverage. Same with low-income residents and residents without cars. This slide summarizes the survey response, which we did. This is like part of the feedback which helped us to kind of decide where on the ridership or the coverage balance we want to be. So the survey kind of leaned towards ridership. We had 60% of the responses which strongly leaned towards the ridership concept, about 20% which were in the middle, they were happy with how the things were, and then we had 20% who preferred the coverage concept. So coming back to the existing network, so this is 50-50. And incorporating all that feedback, this is the draft unit where we kept the balance at 65-35. So as you see, a lot of these routes got consolidated into fewer 30-minute routes. We still have 60-minute routes, which are provided to make sure that we have coverage service in areas with low density. What you see here are also two demand responsive zones in this pale blue color. This one is the Southampton microtransit zone, which is an ongoing pilot. And what we are proposing in the draft new network is that this zone would become like a permanent demand responsive zone. And we also have a new zone proposed for East Hampton and Montauk. And the clock symbols which you see here at Patchogue, Brentwood, Central Islip, Riverhead, these are the timed connections or pulse points, which I talked about before. So the buses coming here, so like for Patchogue, the buses coming here, 6, 51, 77, 55, these all would be timed in a way that they all are within 5 minutes, and the person coming on one route could easily transfer to the other. So what's the outcome? So proximity to transit service. So this is one of the simplest and like one of the main metrics to kind of assess what's the outcome of your transit. It tells you how close a person is to transit. However, it doesn't really tell you how useful that service is. So this is broken up into like 4 sections. So red color indicates how much population in that group is close or is half a mile walking distance of the transit, which has headways 30 minutes or better. And then the dark blue color tells you 60 minutes, and then the pale blue color is the demand responsive zone. The gray bars are the people or the group, percentage of population in that particular group, which is not close to transit or doesn't have transit service within half of a mile. So as you see, this is the one which is the existing network. So a lot of people have access to transit. They are in walking distance to transit, but that transit doesn't come that often. And there's this number of people who have access to high quality, useful transit, which comes every 30 minutes or better. So when we move from the existing to the draft new network, you see a huge increase in this. Like you have more people who have access to more frequent service, but at the same time, you see the gray bars increasing too. So right here, that's the trade-off. So 30%, about 30% of the population have access to more frequent service, and that's a lot of people. But at the same time, you see a 10% increase in people who are no longer within half a mile of transit. So this increased dramatically, but this also increased 5%. So the trade-off here, and this that's one of the key metrics that we have been using. In in terms of access to jobs, so this is the existing one. This is the draft new network. You see increases about 50% countywide, and then you see bigger increases when you look into specific equity groups. So just to summarize how the existing network and the proposed draft new network, how things have changed. So you had a lot more routes in the existing network, but there was, they were not, like we did not have the weekday and weekend consistent service. Like 90%, 95% of them ran on Saturday, only 1/3 of them ran on Sunday. But in the proposed network, all routes run all week, like from weekday and weekend until 10 p.m. This is a very impactful change, because a person, if they rely on transit and if they use transit, like for example, grocery shopping, you could use it on a weekday, but then if you can't use on a weekend, it's not really something you could rely on. So that's a big improvement. So we have one pilot zone now in Southampton, and then once, if this is implemented, we would have 2 permanent zones. The added one would be East Hampton and Montauk. In addition to that, like if you see the number of routes are fewer, but then you have higher frequency on more of those routes. And in terms of access, I did discuss this, like it increases the access to jobs, number of people who can go further, but at the same time, you see decrease in the number of people who are within half a mile of transit. But given this, the draft network has a potential to really drive the ridership, because more reliable service, weekend service, longer hours. And so this should drive ridership and expand access for a county, for a person in the county to kind of go further in less time. So as I mentioned, we had 2 hybrid community meetings in March. We are still kind of absorbing and collating the feedback we got. The survey is online until April end, so we are trying our best to put the word out, get people to take the survey. We do understand not everybody has time or knows how to go online and take the survey. So we are also doing in-person surveying. So EDT and DPW teams are out at various transit stops, hubs, and we have the same paper version of the online survey, and we are asking people who are there to take the buses to give us their feedback, since they are the users and they know. And apart from that, we are also receiving a lot of feedback from stakeholders using like direct feedback coming through emails and the county staff. So a lot of feedback is coming in, and we are hoping we collate all this feedback and we have a good look, and then we will revisit the draft network and then finalize it in fall of this year. And once we have that nailed down, then we can develop the implementation plan. So where the routes are running and more granular information, like where the stops are, what the schedules are. And thanks to NYMTC, we have a new NYMTC funding once we are done with this to kind of develop the rollout plan. Because since so many changes are being proposed, it will need a good effort in terms of awareness and education. So new maps, new schedules, new stops, the frequency change. A person could get from this to this using a certain pattern now, but how can they get from this point to this point then? So we will be putting a lot of effort in doing a public outreach plan and making sure that the transition of this system is as comfortable and the community is really engaged into that. If do I still have a few minutes? I would love to show the web page.
Yes, I think you can show the web page.
Okay. So this is the project web page which we developed for the plan. Oh, I should have kept it out. Okay. So we have a page which is devoted to this web project. And within that, okay, I'm sorry about that. Just give me a couple of minutes.
Are you trying to locate the survey so we can see what the questions are?
I have it open. I was hoping it could open on a. You still see my screen, right?
Yes, we still can.
Okay. So this is the web page which is all about the draft new network. It kind of provides you the same information which I presented now, but we wanted to make sure that the information is understood and like people are able to really see what we are proposing and are able to provide meaningful feedback. And maps can be difficult to read for people who are not used to it. So we kind of made sure that we had like zoomed in maps too, in addition to the countywide map. So for example, in Babylon, so we have like zoomed in area specific maps, which kind of show things in a more easy to understand manner. They also have boxes, which kind of helps you understand what the change is and what kind of impact it could have. We also wanted to make sure that people with disabilities, people who can't read through the maps, also are able to kind of understand what's being proposed. So we also have this tabular narrative, like for each new proposed route, where how the routing is being proposed, what's the frequency, that route connects with which other routes. So we have that information too, making sure like people really get it. And then we also developed this tool. So, so this tool kind of helps you understand how your access changes. That's the key metric we have been using. So if I don't know, maybe here, Brentwood. So if a person is here in Brentwood, the person can see how his or her access changes with these proposed changes. Also, what you can see here is routes. So this is the proposed route. This is all the proposed network, but you can also go back and see the existing network. So this is a good tool to understand, like, this is all a big study, but like, how does it really impact me, or how does it really impact my daily travel needs? And as I said, the survey is online. The link is here. The link is on the Connect Long Island webpage. So like, we really want people to take this. And I will also take this opportunity, if anybody is on here, I don't know, from the general public, if you're in Suffolk, please go to the site, please take the survey. And it will help us a lot to really understand what you need. And that is it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankita. This is an informative presentation and a very significant planning initiative in Suffolk County. We do have a couple of minutes for some questions. So do any members have any questions about the presentation? While we wait for members, I'll ask, how did you come up with a 45-minute range? Why did you determine 45-minute was the range?
For the isochrones?
Yeah.
So we were advised that, so there could be different ways to look at it, but like there's an average transit time in which you could actually see what's the change. Like if you keep it too low, you won't see the change. If you keep it too high, you won't, like that's that sweet spot, which is the average transit time or the average transit trip. And that is what helps us to kind of, take that as a metric and do the isochrones.
Okay, thank you. And on the routes that will retain the 60-minute range, Or is the schedule posted online? Can someone look that up so they're not standing there? Or let's say they miss a bus and have to wait for an extra hour?
This is regarding the proposed.
The proposed.
Yes. So we are not there yet, but yes, that's part of the project. Like once we have the routing decided, then we will develop the schedule and all of that stuff. And then we are going to make sure that once we are ready to roll out the new system, the education and awareness campaign kind of triggers that. And we will have resources for people to look up. And we have those apps too. We have the Transloc app and the Move It app, which kind of tells you or plan your transit service. And we will make sure that the new network kind of flows with those apps as well.
Okay. Thank you, Ankita. I don't think we have any additional questions. So I will thank you for your presentation.
We do have a couple of chat comments that came in privately. Do we have to address those?
Oh, okay. If we do have, then yes.
Great. Thank you. Yes, they came in via private message. So I just wanted to note that what came in, there's a couple of questions. One question was, when it says that a route runs until 10 p.m., does that mean 10 p.m. from the first stop or 10 p.m. at some point in the route?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's the 10 p.m. where like the route kind of ends, because some of the routes are really long. So if they start at 10, they are gonna end way later, like 11. So I think, and I don't know, Donald, if you can, but I think that's where the stop kind of ends.
Hey, yeah, this is Darnell. Yeah, I would tend to agree. This is probably not the last departure. It probably would be like some midpoint on the route. But I'm sure that level of specifics will be sort of hashed out as the plan, coalesces. I think the main point is that right now we only have 3 routes that run that late. And so we will be changing that from 3 to something like 20. So overall, will be certainly a net increase of service, but some routes, I would think that the 10 o'clock is probably at some midpoint on the route.
Thanks very much. Just 2 more questions. Is the increased frequency on the proposed S7 in lieu of the Sagatos Parkway BRT, or will that be a separate project?
So Sagatos BRT is not being like pursued actively right now. So it's not really in place of that.
Do you have information regarding the percentage of early buses versus late buses in the current network?
I don't have those numbers like readily available as of now. We do have on-time performance numbers, like how many percentage of routes are performing on time, but I don't have that specific information handy.
Thank you. And one final question just came in. Will we be emailing the presentation charts, the things that you just showed? I believe those will be on the NYMTC website.
I think she wants to know if you're going to share the presentation with us.
Well, I believe it would be up on the NYMTC site.
Yes, they should be on the NYMTC website.
Okay.
The presentation will be on the NYMTC website within 2 weeks, together with the recording.
Those are the only questions that came in. Oh wait, I'm sorry, we just got one more, and that will be it. Within the isochrone model, were the time transfers modeled, or was it assumed that the wait time is half the headway? On the isochrone maps, there appears to be a bit of an end to the range at the other hubs.
So the way the isochrone maps are generated, they take into account like where you are, how much walking you have to do to get to transit, and then based on what's the frequency of the route, and like if like you have timed connections, so that also comes into play. So it's like those 3 things come into play depending on what location you are looking at the isochrone for.
Thank you so much for answering these questions, and this is all the time we have for questions right now.
Thank you, Stephanie. Ankita, thank you for the presentation and the response to all those questions. And we look forward to hearing from you in the future. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is public participation. We will now begin the public participation segment of the meeting. Andrea, do we have any registered speakers for today's meeting?
Yes, we do have one. His name is Peter Jenkins. Can you please advance his microphone? Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, Peter.
Yes. Hello.
Peter, we can hear you.
Okay.
Please proceed.
Thank you. I would like to submit a written statement with reference to item 537 on the agenda. I am in support of that resolution, but I would like to expand my comments at a later date in writing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Andrea, are there any other registered speakers for today's meeting?
No, there aren't.
All right, thank you. So let's move on to the action items. Our first action item is, I guess I should say this first. All materials related to the action items have been posted to the NYMTC website at www.nymtic.org. The first action item is to accept the February 10th, 2022 meeting synopsis. I ask that all voting members announce your name and the agency you represent when you make or second a motion. May I have a motion to accept the February 10th, 2022 meeting synopsis?
Hi, this is Darnell Tyson representing Suffolk County. I would like to make a motion to accept the February 10 meeting notes.
Thank you, Darnell. May I have a second?
Second, Jack Schmidt, New York City Department of City Planning.
Thank you, Jack. Now, does anyone have an objection to the motion? Okay, hearing no objections, the meeting synopsis is accepted. Thank you all. The next action item is to adopt resolution number 536, the updated operating procedures for the congestion management process, and for the revisions to the Transportation Improvement Program and the Regional Transportation Plan. I now will ask Jerry Bogas, NYMTC's Assistant Director, to introduce the resolution.
Good
Jerry
afternoon.
will present in the NYMTC office. Sorry about that, Jerry. You can proceed.
No problem. You can hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So NYMTC's planning process is governed by a series of agreements and operating procedures, and Resolution 536 updates two critical NYMTC operating procedures. The revised versions of those procedures are attachments to the resolution, and both the resolution and the attachments are available on the website. I'll quickly summarize both and what has changed. With regard to the TIP and plan revision operating procedures, what has changed is inclusion of regulatory definitions for project amendments, for administrative modifications, for fiscal constraint, and for funding transfers. The addition of procedures for projects in the fiscally constrained plan, clear identification of various funding sources, cross-referencing to the public participation operating procedures, a clarification of language for funding transfers, inactive projects, programming funds for projects from a previous TIP, and administrative modifications involving specialized funding sources. And finally, other minor language clarifications throughout. With regard to the congestion management process operating procedures, they have been completely rewritten based on current practices and regulations. There are references now to the federal regulations which govern the congestion management process as an organizing framework for the entire operating procedure. There is the removal of technical details that are covered in other operating procedures, and there's a clarification of performance measurement for the congestion management process and removal of procedural details for needed data collection. So given the revisions which update both of these key operating procedures, we urge the NYMTC PFAC to consider adopting this resolution.
Thank you, Jerry. May I have a motion to adopt resolution number 536, the updated operating procedures for the congestion management process and for the revisions to the Transportation Improvement Program and the Regional Transportation Plan?
Motion, Jack Schmidt, New York City Department of City Planning.
Thank you, Jack. Now, is there a second?
Second, Pat Gurton, Rockland County.
Thank you, Pat. All right, so we will vote by roll call. I'll start in the lower Hudson Valley. Putnam County? We'll come back to Putnam. Westchester County?
Putnam, yes. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Westchester County?
Approved.
Thank you. And Long Island, Nassau County?
Aye.
Rockland's and I.
Okay, thank you, Rockland. Suffolk County?
Approved.
New York City Department of Transportation?
Approved.
And finally, Metropolitan Transportation Authority?
Approved.
And I say approved for the New York State Department of Transportation. Thank you. The motion passes. The next action item is resolution number 537, amendments to the federal fiscal years 2020 to 2024 Transportation Improvement Program to include the Cross Harbor Freight Movement Planning Study. I will ask Carl King of NYMTC staff to introduce the resolution. Please unmute Carl's microphone.
Yes. Yeah, I think I'm already unmuted. You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Carl.
Great. Yeah, this is resolution 537. Is to amend the federal fiscal year 2020 to 24 Transportation Improvement Program to include the Cross Harbor Freight Movement Planning Study. Now, this is based on a memorandum of understanding and based on initiation of any council member that is proposing a region-wide significant project to the tip within a respective TCC. PFAC is promulgated as well as has to take action in order to add that document to NYMTC's tip. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey is doing a planning study that is region-wide significant and therefore should be added to NYMTC's federal fiscal year 2020-2024 Transportation Improvement Program. The planning study is an adjunct to the Tier 2 Environmental Impact Statement. Therefore, be it resolved, PFAC should amend to the federal fiscal year 2020-24 TIP based on TIP Action NYC 20-44 for the inclusion of the Cross Harbor Freight Movement Planning Study. Hey, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Now, I'll ask, do we have a motion to accept resolution number 537, amendments to the federal fiscal year 2020 to 2024 Transportation Improvement Program to include the Cross Harbor Freight Movement Planning Study?
So moved, Naomi Klein, Westchester County.
Thank you, Naomi. Do I have a second?
Second, Nassau County.
Thank you. All right, we will now vote by roll call. Putnam County?
Putnam County approved.
Thank you. Rockland County?
Aye.
Thank you. Westchester made the motion, so we'll move on to Long Island. Nassau County?
Aye.
Suffolk County?
Aye.
New York City Department of Transportation?
Aye.
New York City Department of City Planning?
Aye.
Metropolitan Transportation Authority?
Aye.
And I will say aye for the New York State Department of Transportation. Thank you. The motion passes. The next action item is resolution number 538, which has been tabled at the request of the member agencies. The next action item has been tabled. So the only thing left is a confirmation of our next PFAC meeting, which is scheduled for Thursday, June 16, 2022. Details of the meeting will be made available 2 weeks prior to the meeting. To conclude today's meeting, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Putnam County makes a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Putnam. Is there a second?
Jack Schmidt, New York City Department of City Planning.
Thank you, Jack. If there are no objections, then we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and stay safe.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye, all.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye, guys.